What's up, guys? Welcome to your 11th Java tutorial. What we're going to learn about in this tutorial is the return type methods that return something. Now, just briefly to cover what we've already kind of learned with methods is we have this void, which basically means it's not returning anything. The return statement is void. It doesn't count. You can think of it like that. So here we have a method. Again, we classified it by void, and we just have a system printout for our dog class. I just wanted to quickly show you this is a method that you guys should be somewhat familiar with, but there's also other types of methods that return something. And if you've been following the series under our character development class, you can see here's another method. It doesn't have a void statement. Instead of saying void, it says string. It's returning a string type variable. Again, we created a string within this method, and that's what we're returning. So to see how this works, actually let's just start a new class that we are going to reference a few times in the future and clean it out. So we're just going to call it example here. So within our example class, let's test this out. So we're going to say public string, and we're just going to say name. Again, it's a method, so we have these parentheses here, open and close, and it says it needs to add a return statement because, again, we are not using void. We could just say void and we wouldn't need a return statement, but we want it to return a string. So we need some sort of a return statement, so we need to type return, and we're going to say some sort of a string that we're going to return. So we're just going to say Travis, something like that, and semicolon, or you can set up a string within here equals n, set that equal to Travis, and then return n as well. Doesn't matter. So the key point is, again, we aren't using void. We're telling what type of thing that we're going to return. So a string or a Boolean value or int, some kind of definition of what this method is returning. So now you're like, okay, well, what exactly is going on here? How does this work? What are we doing? I forgot my semicolon. And so let's go into our starting point class here and just test it out. Again, this is our main method that the compiler uses. So whatever class you have your main method in, that's what we're going to set up. So after we save, we're going to set up a quick object from the example class. So again, example, we're going to call this E is equal to a new example object, just the basic constructor there. And now what we can do is we can set up a string variable. We're just going to call this string S, or whatever you guys would like to call the string. And now what we're going to set this string equal to, we could just say, whatever we want here, just the way that we generally set up a string, or we can get some sort of string from a different class using that return statement. So again, we're just going to say E, which is our example object, and we can say dot, and we can say name because we have that method that we defined. So we're going to say name and hit enter, or I'm sorry, semicolon. So now we have our string variable set up. We can just do a system print out, and then we're just going to give it the variable of our string that we wanted printed out. So let's save this, run it, and see what happens. As you can see down here, it just says Travis, which is what we should expect. But let's quickly talk about everything that's happening right now. So again, we have this example type object, and we just use the constructor. That's basic. So it's going to create an example object, and so it's going to be like, okay, here's your example object. Here's the example class. You have access to this method called name. Now this name method will return a string, and so we have to make sure we use a return statement within that method that returns a string. So we just set up a string called Travis within this method, and that's what we're returning. So now we go back to the starting point class, and we set up a new string variable, and we're like, okay, we need to set this equal to some sort of a string, and we're like, oh yeah, we have a method that returns a string, so that's what we're going to set this string equal to. So again, it's referring to the example class using that method I just talked about called name that returns Travis, and then we're just system printing that string there. So hopefully that makes sense. This quick introduction to a different type method besides void. Again, void, you can just think of that as it's not returning anything. The return statement is, void, so you don't need to do it. But let's also, just to elaborate quickly, you guys can skip to the next video, but just to test out these variables or these return statements that we built with our interface, we have the get hit and also this other damage method. So let's just check how those work real quickly. Within our starting point class, we're going to create a Travis object, call it T. We're going to set this equal to be a new Travis object. And now we're going to do system out print line. So PRLN. And we could set up a string variable. S equal to be, a Travis object like I showed you previously. Again, this method returns a string, but we can also just, instead of doing that, where we say T dot get hit, we can just do Travis get hit, which again is a method that returns a string. We set that string equal to S, and we can print that out, or we can just cut out this method here, paste it here, because again it's returning a string. We don't necessarily need to set this equal to a variable. We could if we want, but just for the purpose of this example, we aren't going to. So again, this is just going to return our string, and that's what we're going to print to the system. And I'm just going to copy this here. We also have that method that does some damage, so we can also do Travis, or T I should say, damage, and we can say current health. We want to pass in some information. It starts with the current health of 200, and the damage is 1, because again, you pretty much can't hurt Travis. It's crazy. So again, this is returning an int, because again, this method will return an int instead of a string. So it's either going to kill us, where it returns 0, or it's going to return basically our current health minus the damage done. So again, we can set up an int variable, call this I, set that equal to the method, and then we can do a system print out where we just do I, or again you can copy this method, paste it down here. But again, just to show you both ways, that's kind of how it works, and we're just going to save our project and run it. And now when we run this, as you can see here, it says that tickled a bit, and it returns the int of 199, 199. So that's kind of how that works with the return methods and how they're used. Again, we'll get more familiar with methods when you use void, when you use return, the interfaces, constructors. We're going to use all that stuff. So again, if you guys get confused, stick with the series, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Have a good one.